Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, you know, I love a good book,
Hmm.
but your notes took me down a rabbit hole this time.
Right.
We're talking multiple passports, driver's licenses,
Okay.
bank accounts all over the place. It's like someone's living a spy movie,
Right. It's a very unique approach to personal security.
to say the
But
least.
looking at these notes, it's more than logistics.
Oh, really?
It's a whole mindset we're dealing with here.
Okay, so the notes mention fear of legal trouble,
Hmm.
especially from exes and just not trusting the government.
Yeah.
Are we talking full-on conspiracy theories here?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's definitely extreme, sure,
Okay.
but it taps into a real anxiety. A lot of people feel vulnerable,
Uh-huh.
in a world where information is everything.
It's like when you realize how much data's out there about you,
Right.
how easily it could be used against you.
Exactly. And for some, that leads to wanting extreme control.
Mm-hmm.
Get off the grid completely. But even the notes say that's impossible now.
Yeah. So no more disappearing, huh? No matter how many burner phones you got.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's a paradox.
Yeah.
You want to be anonymous, but you rely on the systems you're trying to escape.
Okay.
Travel, banking, communicating. All on the grid.
Like trying to outrun your own shadow, right?
Uh-huh. Perfect analogy.
Hmm.
So that brings us to their solution.
All right.
It's fascinating, if complex,
Mm-hmm.
the multi-grid strategy.
Things are getting interesting. Multiple passports, licenses, bank accounts, global hide and seek, basically.
Yeah, basically, they're spreading themselves across different places, so no one entity can control them.
One story stood out to me. 6 weeks in some country just for a driver's license.
Wow.
6 weeks. Is a license really worth that?
It's not about the license. It's about what it represents.
Okay.
A foothold in another legal system. Another piece of the puzzle.
So it's like building a fortress, but with passports and bank accounts.
Yes. But wouldn't it be a nightmare to keep up with?
That's what I was thinking. I can barely manage my own bills.
Right. You'd need incredible organization, constant vigilance, and deep understanding of all these different countries' laws and finances.
Not to mention the legal risks if you mess up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You could end up in more trouble than you started with.
And that's where jurisdiction shopping comes in, right?
Yeah. They're choosing which legal system works best for them in any given situation.
So picking and choosing the rules seems kind of ethically questionable.
It does. And it's definitely a gray area.
Oh.
The source sees it as empowerment, but there are consequences to consider.
Right, because even with all this, the notes claim it puts you above the law, which sounds a little delusional, if you ask me.
It is. It's this idea that by being everywhere, you're beyond anyone's reach.
Like those movie villains who run off to a private island.
Uh-huh.
And spoiler alert, it never works out for them.
Right. You might slow things down, but international law, extradition treaties, all that still applies.
So no escape hatch. But maybe it at least makes things harder. Like throwing a wrench in the works.
In a way, yeah. It's more of a labyrinth than a straight path. It might not stop them, but it slows them down.
Speaking of complicated, there's this analogy I didn't get. The source compares themselves to a blockchain. I get the decentralized part, hard to change. But is it really that similar?
It's a clever analogy, but like most analogies, it kind of falls apart when you look closer.
Okay.
They see their assets and identities as nodes in a blockchain,
Right.
creating redundancy and security.
So each passport's a block, each bank account's a block, and so on. But wouldn't you need serious cryptography for that to work in real life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where it breaks down. They have multiple nodes, but not the key features of a blockchain.
Oh, okay.
No cryptographic security, no consensus mechanism, no immutability.
And blockchains are supposed to be transparent, right?
Yeah. Anyone can see the transactions.
Not very anonymous.
Right. The analogy is more about the idea of decentralization than actually using the technology.
So it's how they see their security, not actual blockchain protection. It shows this obsession with control, though, right?
Yeah.
Outsmarting the system.
Yeah. Like they're trying to hack real life.
It's a game.
That's a great point. It reflects a bigger trend we're seeing. This tension between wanting to be in control and the reach of institutions and tech growing bigger.
It's like we're all trying to figure out this digital world where everything's connected and information is power,
Exactly.
but is going off the grid or making your own mini grid the answer.
It's one way to look at it, but it's not practical for most people.
Right.
And as we've said, it's complicated and has downsides.
Seems like a lot of work for security that might not even be real.
Right. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the feeling of control more than actual safety.
It's about the psychology behind it all, then.
Yeah. This is driven by fear and anxiety. They want to be safe from threats, even if they're imagined.
It's like that saying, just because you're paranoid.
Uh-huh. Right.
But they seem more afraid of people than the government. Why is that?
It shows how power is changing in the digital age.
Mm.
Anyone can get information and tools now, for good or bad.
So it's not just about Big Brother anymore.
Nope. It's anyone with a smartphone and internet.
Makes it harder to protect against.
Yeah, much harder.
So back to get off the grid. If you can't escape, what can you do?
Right.
How do you stay connected but protect yourself?
The million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer. But maybe it's about changing how we think.
Okay.
Instead of get off the grid, maybe it's be smart about the grid.
Be smart about the grid. I like that. What does that even look like?
It starts with awareness. Knowing what you share online and what it could mean.
Like thinking twice before posting those vacation pics.
Exactly. But it's more than that. You got to protect your data too. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful with apps.
So building a digital fence around your info.
Yes. And there are tools for that. Privacy browsers, encrypted messaging, VPNs.
Sounds like a lot. Is it really worth it?
That's up to you.
Yeah.
But privacy isn't just hiding things. It's about control over your info and how it's used.
It's about being in control of your own digital life.
Absolutely. And that's worth fighting for. Data is valuable these days. Your info is one of your biggest assets.
So less about disconnecting and more about being a good digital citizen.
Exactly. Know your rights, know the risks, make good choices online.
It's that sweet spot between being connected and staying private.
Exactly. And that'll be different for everyone. The key is knowing your choices and taking control.
You know, after all this, I'm seeing these notes differently. It's not about disappearing. It's about this anxiety we all have about losing control in a world that's always changing.
That's insightful.
Huh?
It shows the challenge we face. How do we balance our need for privacy with this connected world?
We're all trying to figure it out.
And that's why talking about it's important. The more we understand, the better choices we make.
So what's the big takeaway? What do you want listeners to remember?
This approach to security is extreme, maybe not realistic, but it shows the tension we all deal with. Privacy is not a given. It's something to protect and fight for.
And instead of get off the grid, maybe it's be smart about the grid.
Exactly. Know the rules and use them to your advantage.
Be smart about the grid sounds good in theory, but how do you actually do that? Where do you even start?
Start with awareness. Know what your digital footprint is, what you share online, what could happen because of it.
So like not posting everything on social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's more, you got to protect your data.
Yeah.
Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful what apps you use.
Like putting up a fence around your information so no one can just grab it.
Exactly. And there are tools to help you do that. Privacy browsers, encrypted messaging, VPNs.
Okay.
All those add extra layers of protection.
A lot of stuff to remember, though. Is it really worth all that?
That's a personal choice. But privacy isn't just about hiding.
Okay.
It's about having control. You decide how your information is used.
So it's about freedom. In the digital world, I mean.
Exactly. You're in control of your own digital life.
Yeah.
And that's worth fighting for. Data is like currency now. Your info is valuable.
So you're not cutting off completely. You're just being a good digital citizen.
Yeah. Know your rights, know the risks, make good choices online.
Find that balance between staying connected and keeping some privacy.
Exactly. And that balance is different for everyone. But you got to know your choices and be in control.
This is making me think about those notes differently. It's not really about disappearing. It's more about the fear of losing control in a world that's always changing.
I think you're right. It's the challenge we all face. How do we keep our privacy in this super connected world?
Right. It feels like the rules are always changing.
Exactly. And that's why these conversations matter. We have to understand the digital world to make good choices and stand up for ourselves.
So what's the one thing you really want listeners to take away from all this?
That this get off the grid thing is extreme, probably not realistic, but it shows us something important. Privacy matters. It's not a guarantee. We have to fight for it.
And maybe instead of trying to escape, we just need to be smarter about how we use the grid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We got to know the rules and use them to our advantage.
So to wrap things up, I'll leave you with this. In a world where our online lives and real lives are basically the same thing, what does it really mean to be in control of who you are? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.